Hi everybody, I hope you were all well. It's another gloomy Sunday morning here in the south of England, but then what's new? Um, Another week has gone by so fast, but it has been a really stressful week for me with work. I know I sound like a broken record because I always mention it, but it's just, especially with lockdown, it takes up obviously 5 out of the 7 days of my life, and due to various circumstances, there's been a lot of strain this week. So this week I've mainly been focusing after work on Doctor Who because I need it. I need it right now. I am now in my rewatch. Today will be the end of week 2 of my rewatch, and I am right at the end of series 6. So I'm going to finish series 6 later today. And then, I can start series 7 tomorrow. But other than Doctor Who, I've been focusing on making sure I go for a walk every day to clear my head. And sometimes it really hasn't worked because it's been extreme this week with work. And Sudoku. I know you're probably thinking, well, what about reading? It's just literally, I have been so exhausted every weekday after work this week. I just haven't had the energy. So I'm doing Sudoku instead. So I'm still using something to clear my mind to help me bring me down from work, but nothing too strenuous. So because of that, I waited until yesterday to start the book I'm here to talk about, which is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And because I was like, I've got a day where I don't have to be anywhere, I don't have to do anything. I can just completely 100% focus on this book after a really good night's rest. And obviously, I'm not working, so my mind is not focused on that whatsoever. Perfect day for it. And then I started reading the book. And from watching this channel, or if you haven't seen through this channel, my reviews and such, it's not often that I don't finish reading a book. Maybe one, maybe two a year. It is like mid-February or getting closer to the end of February. And this is my second DNF book of the year, which stands for Do Not Finish, if you're not aware. And do you know the reason why I'm being very feeling very strongly about this? I'm going to get onto the book in a minute, but I mean just in general about not finishing books. I have been, in previous years, I've been very much, I should really try and get through this as much as possible. And even though I'm hating reading this, I am going to persevere unless it's been so extreme that I just can't carry on. And after getting through 2020, I'm like, life's too short. And if I am really not happy, then I shouldn't put myself through that. I mean, with the other book that I didn't finish earlier this month, the Thursday Murder Club, that was because of structure that I had issue with. And in this case, it's a mixture of structure, logic, and the writing. And I don't want to slog through. I got through 100 pages. 110 pages. I don't want to have to slog through another 400 pages just to have the same feeling. So I'm like, why put myself through that? Life's too short. If I can't finish it, I can't finish it. And that's where I am with this book. So what is The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle about? So this is about a guy called Aidan who wakes up every morning in the body of another person who came to the party of Evelyn Hardcastle. She is the one who the party's been hosted for, not by it's her parents who are hosting the party. And she gets killed. And Aidan is on this mission, or this challenge, to discover what happened to Evelyn. And every every morning he wakes up in the body of somebody else who attended the party. So at one time he never knows whose body he's going to wake up in, and he has to solve the crime of who murdered Evelyn Hardcastle, what happened to her. Now, about the title. Now, the other week I gave a review of Bone China, which I absolutely loved, and mine and my sister's friend Sarah, hi Sarah if you're watching this, she loved our rave reviews of it, and she got all 3 of Laura Purcell's books from her library. She lives in America, and every single one of those books has a different title. And I was like, okay, that's very well. I mean, different titles happen in overseas territories compared to the UK quite often, but I've not heard of every single title of one author being changed. That's very odd. And the title of this book is different overseas also. I don't know if it's just America or if it's in other territories, but I've read that it's also known as the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Now, the reason why was that the year before, the 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo was released, which I absolutely loved. I read it last year. I love that book. Evelyn is still one of my book best friends. Because whenever I think of the title, just all of these images from the book come back, which I absolutely loved, and I'm like, yes, girl. So I'm like, yeah. And this came out the year after. So to differentiate between the 2 titles, because 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, the 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, very similar. They overseas in America, they made it the 7.5 Deaths. So there is a slight title difference between the 2. So yeah, so as I said, it's about this guy, Aidan. He wakes up in the body of somebody else from the party every single day to be able to figure out what happened to Evelyn. Or Evelyn, depending on where you live, where you are, how you pronounce it. We say Evelyn here, but Evelyn, whatever. So this is a debut novel by Stuart Turton. I have not read any of his books before, and this was getting pretty rave reviews in the Facebook book club, which I'm a member of, and it kept on popping up on my feed. And I was like, you know what? In my book haul that I did for Christmas / New Year, I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a go. And I deeply regret it. I deeply, deeply regret this. Now, the issue that I mainly have with this is it is way over complicated. I am not kidding you when I say there's probably about 15 to 20 main characters or recurring characters that you've got to keep your eye on as you go around this book. So trying to figure out exactly where Aidan is, who he has already encountered, whose body he's already been in, and what information he already knows is very hard to keep track of. Also, he keeps on finding cryptic notes throughout the time, or at least the sections of the book that I read, and they are really confusing. And then what really, really got me, well, I was just a bit like, are you fucking kidding me? There was the last chapter that I read. He's already been in one person's body, and he met a character called Daniel, and Daniel acted a certain way, and now he's in the body of another character, and Daniel comes to see him, but Daniel didn't do that the previous day. So he's like, why is Daniel acting differently? And he's having this conversation, and Daniel goes, oh, I'm actually you in the future. I'm 4 days ahead of you. I've got to tell you something. Right, okay. And the thing I want to tell you is that Evelyn is the one who's going to die. She dies at 11 p.m. on the dot every single day. And no matter how much I try to intervene, she will always die at 11 p.m. Right, okay. But here's my thing. Well, surely the version of Aidan who we are following needs to be able to experience that in order to then go back to, as his future self, to talk to a previous self to tell him. So if you've told the previous self, how is that previous self going to learn that information to be able to then tell for him when he gets to that point in the future to then tell his previous? Do you know what I mean? It's time travel, but it's really overly complicated. And there's also this weird thing that when it first opens, the body of the person who he's in is screaming, running through the woods after a figure who he's saying is the killer. I'm phrasing it that way because I've not got to the end of this book. I don't know who the killer is, but just because that's what you're told instantly, this is the killer who I'm going after. So he's chasing through the woods after the killer, screaming that a woman called Anna is dead, yet nobody is called Anna on the property. No one's heard of Anna. There's no guests that are called Anna. Nobody can find Anna. And then suddenly he's getting cryptic notes from Anna telling him what to do. And it's like, wait, what is this? And there's a plague doctor, in full plague doctor gear, telling him what he needs to do. And it's like, what is this? I got through 110 pages, went through like body flips between about 4 different people, had encounters from future versions of self, but then, as I said, how can the current Aidan learn about, surely he has to experience Evelyn dying, because we never even experienced that where I got to, in order to have that knowledge to devote his future self to then tell his previous self. Like, it was just baffling. Now, I love time travel. I love Doctor Who, for crying out loud. He's a time traveller. I get the laws of time travel and all this lot, but isn't it, it's just very strange. And the fact that last chapter also told me that people can act differently because it's actually future versions of Aidan, or even past versions of him. If he is in a room where possibly everyone is a future or a past version of himself and therefore aren't acting the way that they did at the party, then how is Aidan going to learn who the killer is? It's just so odd. I mean, the premise sounded brilliant, but the execution was just so weird and poor. And it's pretty small text, guys, for this. This is 500 pages long. I felt like I'd gone through a lot, and I was like really struggling to go on after 100 pages, and I managed to 110 in the end, and I'm just like, you know what, life's too short, this is not working for me, I am done. It's too overcomplicated for what it is. I feel I think for a debut novel, I get it's trying to be clever and such, and as I said, the premise sounded really promising, but I think the way that Stuart has written it, it's too much. If he had pulled back a bit, I think that would have worked so much better. And you know what, also, because it really annoyed me, because a future version of himself came to speak to him, to tell him exactly who's going to die and all of that lot, that just lets you know that the version of himself that you are following isn't necessarily the version of, in the end. It just, like, the whole thing that there are other people who could be possessing the characters, that leads me to think at some point, does that mean like every single character could be possessed by Aidan just at different points of his timeline, and therefore he ends up being the killer? Do you know what I mean? It's just like, what is this? And the whole Anna thing just didn't work for me. Okay, I know that's like, I've been like major spoily in my rant, but I needed to be. And one thing really, really, really ticked me off. And I know this is most likely coincidental because the books were only published like a year apart from each other. But Evelyn, the wonderful Evelyn, she's very, she's described as being in her mid to late 20s. She's thin, she's angry, she's got blonde hair, she's got sparkling eyes, and she wears the most stunning green dress that you can think of. Gorgeous. Remind you of anyone? Reminded me of someone. It certainly did. I'm like, you stole, well, not stole, because as I said, it's probably coincidental, but the fact that Evelyn Hugo is thin, she's angry, she's in her frame, she's got bright eyes, she's got blonde hair, and her definitive style is a stunning green dress. Like, I'm not making this up, guys. I was so shook by that. I was like, oh my god, he's basically written Evelyn Hugo into his crime novel. It was just like, what? I just like, you know what, I can't. And I know, as I said, it's most likely completely coincidental, because this may have taken, you know, quite a significant amount of time to write, to edit, to redraft, all of that lot. But it's just like, I can't, as soon as I read Evelyn's description, I'm like, that's Evelyn Hugo. That is Evelyn Hugo. That is her style. That is what she looks like. That's her hair colour. That's her eyes. That's Evelyn Hugo. I can't see her as Evelyn Hardcastle. I can't at all. So I was baffled, I was confused, I was annoyed, I was irritated, and I shouldn't have to feel like that when reading a book. So that's why I have stopped reading it. This is I'm not even going to try later on this year, like I'm going to try with the Thursday Murder Club. Because I thought that with the Thursday Murder Club, I was just wondering if it was just, I was in not a good headspace that week as well, but yeah, structurally it was annoying, but I thought I'd give it a try again. And this one I just can't go there. So I'm just going to read bits of it for you to explain what he has to do and such. And another added thing which complicates the body jumping, which I forgot to mention. So this is him when he's meeting the plague doctor properly. I think he'd met him once before, I think it was, but it was a very short thing. But this is properly meeting the plague doctor to explain what he has to do. Okay. I strike the match with trembling hands, touching it to the lamp. Flame explodes behind the glass, driving the shadows deep into the corners and illuminating my visitor. It's the man in the plague doctor costume I met earlier, the light revealing details I'd missed in the gloom of the study. His greatcoat is scuffed and tattered at the edges, a top hat and porcelain beak mask covering all of his face except for his eyes. Gloved hands rest on the black cane, an inscription inlaid in sparkling silver down the side, though the writing's much too small to read at this distance. Observant, good, remarks the plague doctor. Footsteps sound from somewhere in the house, and I wonder if my imagination is sufficient to conjure the mundane details of such an extraordinary dream. What the hell are you doing in my room? I demand, surprising myself with the outburst. The beak mask ceases to its exploration of the room, fixing on me once again. We have work to do, he says. I have a puzzle which requires a solution. I think you've mistaken me for someone else, I say angrily. I'm a doctor. No, you were a doctor, he says, then a butler, and today you're a playboy, tomorrow a banker. None of them is your real face or your real personality. Those were stripped from you when you entered Blackheath, and they won't be returned until you leave. Reaching into his pocket, he pulls out a small mirror and tosses it onto the bed. See for yourself. The glass shakes in my hand, reflecting a young man with striking blue eyes and precious little wisdom behind them. The face in the glass isn't that of Sebastian Bell or the burnt butler. His name is Donald Davis, said the plague doctor. He has a sister called Grace and a best friend called Jim, and he doesn't like peanuts. Davis will be your host for today, and when you wake up tomorrow, you'll have another. That's how this works. It wasn't a dream after all, it really happened. I lived the same day twice in the bodies of two different people. I talked to myself, berated myself, and examined myself through somebody else's eyes. I'm going mad, aren't I? I say, looking at him over the top of the mirror. I can hear the cracks in my voice. Of course not, said the plague doctor. Madness would be an escape, and there's only one way to escape, Black Keith. That's why I'm here. I have a proposition for you. Why have you done this to me? I demand. Well, that's a flattering notion, but I'm not responsible for your predicament, or Black Keith's for that matter. Then who is? Nobody you'd care to meet or need to, he says, dismissing the notion with a wave of his hand, which brings me back to my proposition. I must speak with them, I say. Speak with whom? The people who brought me here, whoever can free me, I said through gritted teeth, struggling to keep hold of my temper. Well, the former is long gone and the latter was before you, he says, tapping his chest with both hands. Perhaps it's the costume, but the movement seems somehow theatrical, almost rehearsed. I suddenly have the sense of taking part in a play in which everyone knows their lines but me. Only I know how you can escape Blackheath, he says. Your proposition? Precisely, through Riddle, though Riddle might be closer to the truth of it, he says, lifting out a pocket watch and checking the time. Someone's going to be murdered at the ball tonight, and it won't appear to be a murder, and so the murderer won't be caught. Rectify that injustice, and I'll show you the way out. I stiffen, gripping the sheets. If freeing me is within your power, why not just do it, damn you? I say. Why play these games? Oh, because eternity is dull, he says, or maybe because playing is the important part. I'll leave you to speculate. Just don't procrastinate for too long, Mr. Davies. The day will be repeated 8 times, and you'll see it through the eyes of 8 different hosts. Bell was your first, the butler was the second, and Mr. Davis is your third, which means you only have 5 hosts left to discover. If I were you, I would move quickly. When you have an answer, bring it to the lake along with proof at 11 p.m. I'll be waiting for you. I will not play these games for your amusement, I snarl, leaning towards him. Then fail out of spite, but know this, if you don't solve this problem by midnight in your final host, you'll be stripped of all your memories and return to your body of Dr. Bell, and this will all begin again. So that's the predicament. That's exactly what he's been told by the plague doctor that he has to do. So a little bit later, Mr. Davies has fallen asleep. And instantly, this then happens, okay? Agony, I scream, tasting blood. I know, I'm sorry, says a woman's voice. A pinch, a needle enters my neck. Warmth melts the pain. It's hard to breathe, impossible to move. I can't open my eyes. I hear rolling wheels, hooves on cobbles, a presence by my side. I start coughing. Shush, don't try to talk. You're back in the butler, said the woman in an urgent whisper, laying a hand on my arm. It's been 15 minutes since Gold attacked you, and you've been taken by carriage to the gatehouse to rest. Who are? I croak. A friend. It doesn't matter yet. Now listen, I know that you're confused and tired, but this is important. There are rules to all of this. There's no use trying to abandon your host the way that you just did. You get a full day in each of them, whether you want it or not. That's from whenever they wake up until midnight. Understand? I'm dozing, struggling to stay awake. That's why you're back here, she continues. If one of your hosts falls asleep before midnight, you'll jump back into the butler and carry on living that day. When the butler falls asleep, you'll be returned. If the host slept past midnight or if they died, then you'll jump into someone else. I hear another voice, rougher, from the front of the carriage. Gatehouse coming up. Her hand touches my forehead. Good luck to you. Too tired to hold on, I slip back into the dark. So they fall asleep, so he wakes up in another body. Do you see what I mean? There's so many rules, there's so many things going on, but how can he solve a crime if future versions of himself are possibly in other people's bodies at the same time, which then he can't eliminate people because they might be acting differently because they're possessed by a future version or a past version of himself. It's baffling, utterly baffling. And I was just like, you know what? I don't want to slog through another 400 pages of this. It's too much. It needs to be pulled back. there was one thing I forgot to mention earlier, that this whole party is happening because Evelyn's parents are hosting a party to welcome her back from a trip to Paris. Very nice. But here's the weird thing. The party is actually being held at this house where they haven't been in for 19 years. Blackheath. That's it. Sorry, even though I've just said it like multiple times, my brain just went blank on the name of the house just then. Blackheath is where the party's been held. They haven't been there for a very, very long time because 19 years previously, Evelyn's brother was murdered at Blackheath at the lake, and the parents decided to host this party on the anniversary of the murder at the lake. And also, everyone who's invited to the party were at the same event where their son was murdered 19 years before. How messed up is that? I'm sorry. So it just seems like, right, okay, whoever killed Evelyn must also have killed the brother then. But as I said, how is he be able to know that if at any one time he could be speaking with a future or a past version of himself, and also trying to figure out these cryptic clues left by past and future versions of himself? It's too much. It is too much. So I had to stop. I kind of feel like this is something where perhaps it worked better in an audio book, just so that you could just binge it. But then, would you have time to binge a book like this? I don't know. It's 500 pages of a lot of information. A lot of information. This has actually been picked up by Netflix to make into a 7-part program. And to be honest, okay, a program format I think would work so much better than a film, my God. But I really hope that they restructure it and they clean up a lot of issues with the structure and such of this. It's very strange to have a party held at the spot where on the 19th anniversary of the murder of their son, and all the guests were at the same party 19 years earlier when the son died. You know, it's just, and apparently there's also there's a psychotic footman on the loose as well. Like, let's throw that into the mix. Clearly he's a red herring. It's too obvious. It's too obvious he's a red herring. And if he's not a red herring, then what the feck is that about? But yeah. So guys, I'm sorry if you were hoping that I was going to read this book and love it and rave about it, but I just can't. I can't get through this. It's too complicated. It's strangely structured. There are things that don't make sense. It's baffling, and so I can't do it. So those are my thoughts on the 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, or the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, depending on which territory you live in, by Stuart Turton. So, would I read this again? No. Big no, that's not gonna happen. Would I read any more of Stuart's works? Not interested. Sorry, Stuart. If this is your debut and it's overcomplicated and weirdly written and it just doesn't make sense. I know obviously you can improve your writing through later books, but I'm not interested. Not interested in reading any of Stuart's further books, unless something like I read otherwise say that he's improved his writing, you know, all that lot, then I might consider. But right at this moment, big no. Would I recommend this to anyone? No, not unless they want to read something that's overly complicated and, quite frankly, a bit of a mess. So, those are my thoughts on the 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I'm being blunt because I'm like, life's too short, like I said, and I'm the only Evelyn in my heart is Evelyn Hugo. she is queen. She is my book best friend. Well, one of my book best friends, should I say, not my only one. And I love her so much. So Evelyn Hardcastle, get out of the way. I just literally just shoved my book down the sofa just then. I know you couldn't see it, but that's why my arm gestured out like that, doesn't it? So let's get away from Evelyn Hardcastle. So have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below, or give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, entirely up to you. I'll let you decide. And I'll be back with my thoughts in my next read, which is The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. I have never read any of Lisa's work, but this I thought was quite interesting concept of a baby gets found in the upstairs of I think it's a house, or might be a flat, I'm not sure. And the baby's well looked after, fed, changed, all that lot. But three decomposing bodies are downstairs who have been there for several days. So who's been looking after the baby, and where are they? So yeah, I find the concept very interesting. Clearly, the designer is the same designer, or marketing department very much understand that the design is very much like the woman in the window, so it will appeal to people. The font, the color, even the picture looks very much, not exactly the same, but it's very much like The Woman in the Window by A.J. Flynn. So yeah, let's see what The Family Upstairs is like. So I'll be back with my thoughts on that when I'm done. Alright guys, bye!